Today's episode of the BS Podcast is brought to you by SeatGeek, our presenting sponsor and our favorite app for buying and selling tickets for sports and music. Go to SeatGeek.com/BS to start using SeatGeek. They do not sell hats on that website, sadly. Their hats are awesome. Don't forget to download the free SeatGeek app and a promo code BS. SeatGeek sends you $20 upon your first purchase. Lots of happy SeatGeek customers. I get emails all the time. Thanks for introducing me to SeatGeek. They're awesome. Check it out. Today's episode is also brought to you by NatureBox, and not just because my wife has been a NatureBox customer since 2014, Bryan Curtis. Yeah. Choose from over 100 snacks. Go healthy, go indulgent. Snack away. They couldn't make it easier for you with their Smart Box guarantee. If you get a snack you don't like, they'll replace it in your next box for free. Visit naturebox.com/BS. Get 50% off your first box. Again, approved by my wife. Today's podcast finally brought to you by my new website, The Ringer. Don't forget to subscribe to our upcoming newsletter, which we're aiming for the first Monday in March, mid-March, sorry. TheRinger.com. Let's go.
Yeah. Clear enough for you? All right.
When I think mid-90s West Coast rap, I think Bryan Curtis.
I was a whole player in that, wasn't I? Kind of an underrated part of my resume, really.
It really was. Editor at large of The Ringer, formerly of Grantland, formerly of the Daily Beast, formerly of Slate, formerly of Play, which was a very, very, very underrated part of the New York Times Magazine.
Yeah, it was a kind of a supplement. Yeah,
a supplement thing.
A couple of those publications are even still in business.
Yeah.
Kind of amazing, right?
Play was a little bit of a prototype of what I was hoping to do with Grantland. I always thought it should have worked. They had good taste in writers. They never really knew what it was or why it existed, but the writing was really good.
Whole financial crisis.
Yeah, that didn't help.
Kind of came right on top of our heads. That was fun.
So you know more about the ins and outs of the media than anyone I know. You enjoy the whole culture more than even I do, and I love it. And we always talk about it in the office. When did you start? Like 4 or 5 weeks ago?
Yeah.
It's been great to have you.
Thank you very much.
I like having you in the meetings. And
we derail a meeting by a little sports journalism chatter, don't we?
We totally do.
Every day.
We've had a lot to talk about lately.
We sure have. Woo.
But we're taping this on a Tuesday, and Big Tuesday is tonight. And it's hard to watch these political shows without comparing them to sports media shows.
Yeah.
And especially CNN will have these shows. There'll be 9 people at 2 separate tables.
Yeah.
With the host
studios
wandering between.
Right.
It's almost like Hollywood Squares. Just put them all 3 faces on top of each other. When you watch this stuff, are they doing media better or worse than sports media?
I think they're trying to solve the essential question of 2016, which is how do you do a studio show anymore?
Yeah.
When everybody already knows all the information.
I have a lot of thoughts on this, by the way. But keep going.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like when all the better info and analysis is on Twitter.
Yeah.
Instantly, when you can follow the returns on your laptop or on your device or whatever. And what are people going to say? What are they going to tell us that's new? And punditry, I think, on both sports and politics is kind of lost its thing, right? Like Insta punditry.
Yeah.
Okay, Hillary's in the lead, 25% of the returns are in. There's just nothing to say that's interesting. Maybe there's a joke to crack on Twitter, but so-and-so, an advisor to the Rubio camp, what are they going to say on the CNN show?
So you don't think with stuff like the Trump, like coming out of a debate, I feel like those shows are pretty valuable because I want to know, I know what I thought when I watched the debate. Now we're following Twitter, we're getting other people's opinions, but I do like to hear from people.
Yeah, winners, losers.
Here's what I thought happened. Here was the most important part of that. And sometimes it'll be different than how I saw it. So I do like that part, right?
Yeah, and the funny part is, though, I think they're wrong because I think it's really hard, right? Like the other day, we thought Rubio and Cruz kind of crushed Trump at that debate, or at least changed the narrative, right? So-called. And then the polls came out, and a lot of people thought that Trump won the debate, and Trump's polls really didn't move,
Yeah.
So it is funny. Like, I think there is a value. I think it's better when you have a sports show when you have a winners losers clock on it, right? You can tell me who won, who lost tonight. What's Rubio's path forward? What's Bernie Sanders' path forward? Does he have one? But they are really the same thing.
Well, when I watch, so Barkley, I think, has the gravitas.
Yeah.
And Kenny to a lesser degree, but really Barkley. And you're coming out of a big game, and there's been a lot of moments. I remember writing about this, I'm going to say in 2010 or maybe 2010, LeBron's last Game 5 against Boston, the last home game he played in Cleveland.
Okay.
Boston wins the series, and LeBron is curiously passive and just didn't seem like he had that urgency. And I watched that game, and I was so upset as I watched it, just as a basketball fan, even though I love the Celtics. I wrote a whole piece about it that week, as like just being torn between, I love basketball, but I also love the Celtics. This is great for the Celtics. This is bad for basketball that he's reacting this way. But I'm watching the end of that game, and I'm thinking, I can't wait to hear what Barkley says about this.
Yeah.
Like, I want to know if Barkley, as a great player, he's in the great player club, which we've talked about before. Is he disappointed as a great player that LeBron reacted this way? Who is like that in politics? Is there that person who has that kind of gravitas?
Who can emote for you, right?
Yeah, just that, like,
on your behalf.
I only care what this person thinks.
See, I don't think there is, because I don't think they can take sides in the same way.
True.
Right? Somebody can't come on and just, maybe this on a Fox News or something, but somebody can't come on and just cream Hillary Clinton and go, I'm so disappointed in her. That was just rotten.
Because you wouldn't trust that opinion.
Yeah, and the network, the producers in the air going, ooh, too far. Bring on the pro-Hillary person to balance us out, right? Whereas Barkley, I think what we like about the Barkley thing on political TV is the loose cannon. Like when Chris Matthews comes on MSNBC, I kind of perk up a little bit because I'm kind of like, ooh, what's he going to say? He could he could get fired today, right? He could say something so un-PC that totally gets him fired, and I don't think he's like a, just like a generational talent, but I kind of perk up because I don't know what he's going to say.
That was my attitude during the 2 drafts that I did for ESPN. I just wanted people to be like, wow, he might get fired at any moment. As it turns out, I eventually, I didn't technically get fired, but I had to leave.
Right.
Doing a studio show, I put so much thought into it. It was such a discouraging experience to do the ESPN show for those 2 years. And the biggest thing I learned is that if it's a pregame show that works for football, because in football, you're trying to get information. I'm trying to make picks. I want to gamble. I got fantasy. I'm trying to learn things. There's nowhere to go in basketball. Yeah. It's like, oh, the Warriors and OKC are playing tonight. So what do you think's going to happen? Well, I think they have to do this. And you're not saying anything. You don't have any weight. The weight comes after the game.
Right.
That's when it matters. And our situation when I did Countdown for 2 years was we were basically a pregame show. And Barkley's show is a postgame show.
Right.
And the postgame show is where you want to be.
Yeah.
We would be on location for these playoff games, and we'd have, the game would end. They'd throw it right to SportsCenter. They'd come back to us for 3 minutes. You'd have to race to make your 40-second point, but you weren't like digesting the game.
Yeah.
And I think that's the advantage that people don't realize that TNT has, other than the fact that Barkley is the best studio guy of all time.
And that was the genius, right? It's just to never pull the plug on the show.
Right.
It's a post-game show that turns into a late-night show.
Yeah.
You just kind of roll with it. It's on in the background, even if you're not really paying attention, right?
And they don't overproduce it.
Yeah.
And Barkley, we've talked about this privately, where Barkley just said the first time he did that show, it was very produced, very structured, and he was just like, can we get rid of all that? I don't want to know what the other guys say. And now they're very careful about, I don't want to know what you're saying. Don't tell me. Don't tip me off. Ernie's the best at that. You need a host that's just super comfortable with being able to ad-lib, roll, kind of knowing to move in and out, kind of knowing to nudge people a certain way. And that's why he's the best.
But it's not overly polished.
Right.
Like some of the pregame hosts are. We're in this segment. We're out of the segment. Who can kind of let it breathe a little bit.
And that was, that was my most discouraging thing about doing Countdown for 2 years, was how overproduced it was. And how, just because that's the ESPN DNA, which is just like everything's got to go from here to here to here and set this up. And we have this rolled package that we did, and you got to do. So when you bring up that, you're going to throw it to the greatest power forwards of all time because we spent 2 days working on this pre-produced package. Now we cut away, and now here's this graphic. And it was almost like doing a play. And we'd basically rehearse the whole show before we went on TV. I knew what everyone else was going to say. The setups were made in a way that they knew what I was going to say, and it wasn't like freeform. That's why the draft was so much fun. The draft is like, I don't know what the fuck's going to happen.
Right. This is how both kinds of TV have changed, by the way. We used to want slickness, I think, or that was what was rewarded by media critics in the newspapers back when we were youngins. Now I think we want people that know stuff. They have opinions, have like informed opinions, or really know stuff. Like we want the kind of shaggy expert. In political terms, this is why Chuck Todd replaces David Gregory. Chuck Todd doesn't look like a TV person, but we Twitter people and people who follow politics think Chuck Todd knows stuff.
And he's a very good interviewer.
Yeah,
I
is
think.
really
I
good.
think his questions are excellent. I've been watching Meet the Press a lot these last few weeks. He's good questions.
Yeah, which he's learned.
Yeah.
He used to be the kind of guy on TV in the morning when I think he was at Hotline on C-SPAN, like, oh, that guy, and then he had the goatee and,
Right.
But
It's
he's kind of the
card.
new generation to me of that, right? He's the kind of slightly, not quite as telegenic, but he knows stuff.
Right. And he's, I was watching on Sunday and Cruz, he's doing the whole mafia ties thing with Trump. And he throws that out and then he moves, he's just kind of throwing it out there, but not backing up.
Yeah.
And Todd interrupted him. He's like, well, wait a second. You can't throw that out. Like, what's your evidence? And then Cruz had to answer, and he did answer it. He had answers.
So that was
But
good.
it was good, but it was refreshing to see somebody be like, oh, wait, hold on a second. You just kind of insinuated he had mafia ties. What does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. It's been an amazing week, right? With Rubio insinuating that Trump peed his pants at the debate. That was kind of a landmark moment in politics, right? I also thought of this another way. It's kind of like sports, is that we want politics to be a battle to the death, right? The fate of the country is at stake. We want you to compete, Rubio. Why are you letting Trump insult you? You go out there and show him. And then when they get into berserker mode, it's kind of like Richard Sherman and Aaron Andrews. Whoa. This is what it's like. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
And we as media, we recoil. Oh, they mean it now, and but you're supposed to be polite. We want you to really compete, like your life's on the line, but we also want you to be really polite. Politeness is important to us too. I thought that was kind of funny.
Why do you think somebody would want to host a debate? I think that's one of the all-time no-win jobs. Mr. Trump, please. Mr. Trump, please. Mr. Trump, please. Your time's up, please.
It seems like totally thankless.
You just like everyone who does it comes off terribly.
And John Dickerson of CBS, have you seen him?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of the star of this cycle.
Yeah,
He's gotten the laudatory profiles, and he comes from print, which I think makes print people happy.
Yeah.
Like he wrote for Time, he wrote for Slate. Oh, he's a smart guy. And I know John a little bit, and he is a smart guy. But it's
Journalist DNA.
Yeah, I've never seen a debate where I thought the moderator did a very good job.
I think it's a no-win job.
No.
It's like doing the pregame studio shows.
Especially with Trump. What do you do? Like how do you keep Donald Trump in line? How do you get Donald Trump to answer a question rather than kind of bullshitting you for, 5 minutes and then going on to the next thing?
It is the biggest problem for me with political media, and this is why I read. You almost have to read through a lens, right? All right, what's your objective with this piece? It's a little like what sports media used to be like.
Yeah.
Kind of before the internet started calling people. I mean, I have columns 2001, 02, 03 where, part of writing a column was to go over the top with the angle. It's like, I remember writing columns about Manning and the Colts where it wasn't balanced. It was just like, this guy's a choke artist. And then eventually as the internet rolls along, you'd be like, yeah, you got to balance that a little bit better. I think the advanced metrics stuff kind of really helped.
Sure. That's another way, by the way. The intrusion of advanced metrics into politics, right? Makes
Yeah.
over. Changed the whole game, right? Storylines that were totally fake got blown up all of a sudden because they could be like, actually, the polls didn't change at all. There was no Rubio comeback, right? It's just, actually the polls between this week and this week didn't change at all. I think it totally affected what a lot of old school writers were doing and kind of getting by with.
Yeah,
for a
Nate
long
had
time.
a huge 2012 victory lap. What's interesting this time around is he was dead wrong about Trump. Like
Right.
and I like Nate, and we've had a very good relationship over the years, but he just misread it completely. And most of his pieces were like, "Don't worry, Trump's going to fade once guys drop out of the race." And then it's like, no, actually, he's not fading.
And when he was challenged in 2012 by the conservatives saying, your polls are wrong, Romney's going to really win, all the lefties rushed to Nate's side. And now all the lefties are enjoying Nate take a bath on Trump, by the way, on Twitter.
Yeah.
That's kind of a funny byproduct. This, like, I guess because he's now in his third cycle and it's okay to, he's too popular, right? Or we're going to poke at him. And he was wrong about Trump, and
But as our friend Charlie Pierce said, he was like, look, this kind of election has not happened since 1896. And I can't even remember the guy, Bryan.
William Jennings Bryan.
Yeah, William Jennings Bryan. He's like, not since William Jennings Bryan has it been this chaotic. And I was like, okay, I trust you, Charlie Pierce.
And well, I also think it's like there's no connection between knowing what's going to happen in the election and being a good reporter, right?
No.
Like, did you know the Warriors are going to win at the beginning of the season and win the title last year? Does that make you, if you didn't, does that make you a bad basketball writer?
Well, last year I bet.
Seen the Warriors?
Last year I bet on the Warriors.
Okay,
but this year, no,
But
hold
you
on.
had good odds, right?
Had good odds. Thought Steve Kerr. But this year, I thought the Rockets would win the most games in the NBA.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to be wrong a lot.
Does that make you a bad basketball writer?
Yeah, I think it does, actually. I know Tate looks down on me
You're
for
willing
it.
to endorse that? Yeah.
Seriously.
He's smirking over there.
I backed the worst chemistry team ever.
Saying the Warriors are going to cruise to a second title isn't really very fun. It's not a very fun column to write. Saying so-and-so team's going to win the regular season and then lose to the Warriors. That's kind of more fun. I think that's with politics, too. An angle saying this Trump thing is fake. Rubio's going to win. Don't ignore the noise. Like, that's a much more fun column in a way to write. It makes you seem smarter.
Well, and the cousin of that is you're better off doing something like that. You're better off. The worst thing you can do is take the favorite. Like, for instance, Sal and I really liked the Broncos as the underdogs in the Super Bowl. And I was like, I'm taking the points, but in the last second, I was like, I'm going to pick Cam to win in the last minute. What I should have done is said, the Broncos are going to destroy the Panthers. You just go out on a limb,
Yeah.
and it's like, what, a 1 in 5, 1 in 6 chance. But if you're right, you look like a genius.
Yeah.
And
political writers like sports writers only remind you of the predictions that came true. They forget about the 9 out of 10 that they missed.
Oh,
right?
totally.
By the way, this is another thing. You mentioned Super Bowl. Jeb Bush, political writers got really excited when Jeb Bush said after South Carolina, give his classy, speech to get out of the race. Or Marco Rubio after New Hampshire said, I ate it in that debate. It was my fault. It'll never happen again. And in a way,
Media loves that.
That's the concession speech they wanted Cam Newton to give after the Super Bowl. Sports writers wanted Cam to give, right?
Yeah.
Like we value, when you're a loser, coming out and being classy and really owning it. If Marco had said, I didn't do anything wrong, I finished 5th in New Hampshire, but it's the media's fault. Like, we would have piled on him just like we piled on Cam.
Well, in sports, you also have the people that butter up the media correctly are always treated more fairly.
Yeah.
And this is something this is a little game that you and I love. Like, who butters up the big ticket reporters and all that stuff. And so, like the Peyton Manning thing, it's easy to see who his sources are, right?
Oh, yeah.
Anytime something's happened to him, Schefter has information on something the next day. Schefter's the most wired-in NFL reporter. Him and Jim Nantz have the same agent. Chris Mortensen, who's now recovering from cancer, but back in the day, like that was somebody Peyton went to, and he just had all these different people. So when something bad happens to Peyton Manning, like this whole HGH thing, it's like a race to poo-poo it and throw it aside and
let's slow down here, right? Yeah.
And I actually think Brady has made a mistake over the years, not kind of throwing little morsels to those guys, because when Deflategate happened, those people weren't covering up for him like that.
Yeah, he doesn't have a guy in the same way.
He doesn't. He has a couple local guys, but not.
I remember Peter King
guys.
would get like the one annual interview with Brady, and he'd have to do it around the charity, and it would kind of be there would be a charity plug, right? Like Best Buddies. I can't remember what the name of his charity was, but that was the way Peter got Tom Brady, and that's how you know a guy's kind of cut off, right? Like there's not even a bat phone to Peter King.
And Manning's the opposite. Manning works that really well. I think Mickelson works stuff well. Like there's people out there that know how to play the game. Yeah, And in basketball, LeBron has all his people.
Yeah.
He's got. I mean, we know who they are. But that's how he does it. And like right now is a situation where somebody could write a really damaging piece about LeBron, just what a huge mistake he's made and how he's screwed, because the Warriors, somebody in the West is winning the title this year. LeBron's not winning with that team.
Right.
Now that's a year later. It's like he might have really botched this whole thing, and he will never win a title again, potentially.
Yeah, and it's only certain writers that would write it. Because then you're torching the bridge, right?
Right. Then you're cut off.
It's kind of the weird thing when everybody becomes this insider, right? Because the whole insider thing relies on access to some degree.
Yeah.
And if you don't know stuff, you're not an insider anymore. What's the point? You're not getting by on your literary chops, right? You're kind of getting by on tweets and information and knowing stuff.
I noticed when I started doing Countdown that first year, the way the stars and the people around them interacted with me was completely different. I had a lot more clout.
You were on TV.
Yeah, just being on that show and being, I was basically the white guy on that show. It was like, oh, the white guy from Countdown. Like, that's who I was. I was with Magic and Jalen and Wilbon. It's like, oh, the white guy. And with, Name the Star, I had a little more sway. It was like I had a weird credibility. What was my credibility? It wasn't changed from the year before.
Right.
But I had a platform, and so they were like, there's that guy. We got to manage him a little bit.
And there are probably fewer people watching you on TV than reading your Twitter feed, right? Like you had.
Yeah.
But they don't. They're still in this old media world. By the way, new power today on television power in sports writing is the ability to read your BlackBerry on television. If you're shown as an insider reading your BlackBerry on camera, which is the worst TV of all time, that means you're truly powerful. Like only a few guys, Schefter, Woj, there's a handful of people that can kind of do that on TV. When I see that, I go, oh, that guy's got some juice.
He's so wired in. He's on live TV.
He can't be bothered.
And this BlackBerry is more important.
Yeah.
Stuff's happening. I was like, hey guys, sorry.
He can't be bothered by the cameras, right? There might be news blowing up his BlackBerry at the same moment.
That's a good move for young reporters. Should be to when they're like Haberstroh. I love Haberstroh.
Yeah.
When he goes on Mike, he should just be like, hold on, guys, and just.
Or the Rachel Nichols show, right?
Oh yeah.
Just kind of be looking down. Rachel's asking a quick kind of like, what? Look up. Did you ask me something?
Wait, what just happened?
By the way, the lines around these athletes are so defined now that when Woody Page breaks a Peyton Manning scoop or alleged scoop this week, he said he was retiring, we all go, never mind. Oh, Woody Page, he's not one of the guys.
But isn't that
he's in Denver, but what does he know?
That's the move, though. If you're basically betting that Manny's going to retire, right? I think we all thought Manny was going to retire. Why not write the column and say two sources say? I'm not saying he didn't have the sources, but that's a great move for somebody.
Sure.
I found out Peyton Manning's retiring. Then if he's wrong, all right, you look like a jackass. So what?
No, everybody will forget.
I thought Stephen A. did that, and I made fun of him during the decision with LeBron when he threw out the Miami thing like 8-9 days before. I think I wrote in a column, if this happens, I'll change my byline to William J. Simmons for the column after the Miami. And if you look in ESPN, the column I wrote after he said he was going to Miami, my byline's William J. Simmons.
Oh, that's funny.
But yeah, he was right. Did he 100% know, or did he have an inkling and throw it out so he'd look right? Chris Sheridan did it with
decision two.
When LeBron went back to Cleveland.
Yep.
He was adamant he was going back.
Yeah, and then when he got it, no one wanted to give him credit for the scoop. There was this fight over who really got the scoop. It's also unfalsifiable, right? And you were talking about the Woj thing about Durant to the Warriors, and the Warriors are looking at Durant. If they sign Durant,
terrible.
Woj is right?
Yeah.
If they don't sign Durant, he can say, and maybe truthfully, oh, well, they looked at it and it didn't work, or he felt obliged to go back to Oklahoma City, whatever. How do we test that this is right? And I'm not saying I even doubt, because I don't know. I just have no information to test if that scoop is correct. We'll never know. He can always say, well, he was going to, the Warriors really wanted him, but now they don't. Or the Warriors really wanted him, but he didn't want to go to the Warriors. I don't know.
Let's hold this thought. We have to talk about HBO Now, which is the new way to stream all of HBO. Every episode of every season of HBO's current television shows, plus the biggest and latest hit movies. They're all on HBO Now. It's the first time they have done this with a streaming service. You can just get it. You don't need cable. You don't need satellite. No TV package is required. You know what else you get? Every episode of classic HBO shows like Curb Your Enthusiasm, The Wire, Eastbound and Down. It's all on there. Showing on HBO Now this month, Fast 7 and San Andreas. You can get your Rock Daily Double.
Nice.
I like both of those movies. Coming to HBO Now later in March, Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, Spy, and Pitch Perfect 2. My daughter's movie du jour right now.
There you go.
She's been watching a lot of that. Coming to HBO Now at some point, maybe this podcast. Who knows? You never know with HBO Now. Download the HBO Now app on your favorite device and start your free 30-day trial instantly. What we're talking about with Woj and LeBron and just throwing out storylines that may or may not happen, which I think is a smart thing to do in this era of media. I think this started during the decision. And this is, if the documentary of the decision will never happen because it's too embarrassing for ESPN and it's too embarrassing for LeBron. But I think the one thing that happened during that whole lead up to the decision and the decision was people throwing out stuff they heard, and they would do it on Twitter. I've done it. I'm guilty. Hearing that so-and-so is thinking about so-and-so. And this has become a new form of sports reporting. And you saw it this week with Stephen A. Smith. I'm hearing Kyrie Irving is unhappy in Cleveland. Okay. I'm hearing he's been unhappy for months. All right. Are you reporting this?
Yeah.
So where are we with this?
Yeah. There was Stephen A. versus Durant. was a big moment.
That was terrible.
Durant fired back, and then it was a
Stephen
whole,
A. threatened him.
Yeah, but that was kind of the war of our times, right? The player denying the story, but it's saying nobody I know talks to you. You this is fake, and the insider, in this case Stephen A. is saying, oh no, I know, trust me, I know, and we'll come to blows about this. Yeah, I mean it's an old.
It wasn't just that. It was basically like, I have information about you. I hope I don't have to use it. That was my insinuation.
Ooh, yikes.
It was like, you better settle down, my friend.
Yeah,
because I know things about you. It was like, Jesus.
The role is old, right? Will McDonough, famously, Peter Vesey, who is the model for Woj and the new guys, I think, in a way.
Two of my heroes.
Yeah, there you go, right?
Will McDonough, especially near the end, got super crusty.
Yeah.
And it would just start going after people in a really, really harsh and like borderline libelous way.
Yeah.
And it was, on the one hand, sad to watch, but on the other hand, as a professional wrestling fan, I loved it.
Because he was the ultimate heel.
It was the Lisa Olsen thing, which was an absolutely terrible story.
I was going to say.
But it turned into the Boston Globe versus the Boston Herald. And that's when Will McDonough like kind of lost his mind.
Right.
Like just throwing like grenades at the Herald staff. And
he had his guys in the league, right?
He had his dudes,
He had his
man.
agendas. He had his guys. But he was
had his
powerful,
dudes.
and people were afraid. And by the way, both Vesey and McDonough, people say, oh, the insider thing is new with all this power. Both Vesey and McDonough were on TV, which at the time was, if you were a sports writer on network TV, that was big.
And what McDonough did, this was one of the last great pre-internet journalism moments, was McDonough's role in the Kraft Parcells leaving New England.
Yes.
And the stories that he wrote that were totally swayed by Parcells and his side of things, and actually him being involved in the story. Like he genuinely was involved.
Yeah.
He had information that he withheld and wasn't sure whether he should say. And then, but it was, I don't remember a reporter being that involved in the story of somebody who knew before the Super Bowl that he was leaving and basically told his team that. McDonough knew, I can't remember the whole chain of events, but he had information that was salient that he did not pass on to his readers.
Right. And he wrote a big story with that Saturday or Sunday morning of the Super Bowl.
Which was terrible. To me, it's like, I love Parcells for saving football in New England. And, the team was about to leave. It was going to go to St. Louis or wherever. He single-handedly created the entire generation that followed Belichick. But he effed us with the Super Bowl.
Right.
Like that story came out the day of that he was halfway out the door. And how is that good for the Patriots? We're trying to win the Super Bowl.
Woj did a podcast the other day. He had this comment where he was a columnist in New York in the 90s, late 90s, early aughts.
Yeah, the Bergen County Record, right?
Right, and he's competing with, he wants to be Lupica and Harvey Araton and all those guys, right? Because that's, the old power was the columnist, the local columnist, right? That's how you got famous. That's how you got on the sports reporters. That's how you got book deals. And he sees the world changing and says, oh, wait a second. In this new internet world we live in, the power is going to be in the insider.
Yeah.
I'm going to go that way, and
he didn't totally want to do that right away because at ESPN.com, they were using him as kind of a big picture NBA columnist. Mm-hmm. And he was really good for ESPN.com, and they would always bury his stuff, and he took it personally, and he went to Yahoo.
Right.
And it was a huge mistake by ESPN in the mid-2000s because Woj was clearly good. Like, you go and read his pieces, and he was unlike kind of anyone else they had. And he goes, and now he's going the insider route. I've always wondered with him, though, and I know Adrian a little bit. He's a good guy. I've always wondered how he has so much power over all these people who give him stuff.
It's a really good question, right?
He just gets all of them.
I know. Everybody.
They just give it to him.
Yeah. Somebody who was an NBA writer the other day was saying, like, he'd noticed that Woj's, the number of columns, where he really goes in on somebody and just destroys them, which he's, does. That's part of his quiver. Had sort of gone down in the last couple months.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like, I took it as a sign that now he's connected to everybody.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
yeah.
That now
I agree.
It's complete.
He's won. Before
it was 60% and then it was 70. Now it's like kind of 98%. And I thought that was really fascinating, right? Like, he's plugged into anybody. And to see, what he does to ESPN, right? Who would dearly love all those scoops.
He would never work for them again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That he's pulled power away from, they own that in football. They basically own that in baseball, with a couple of exceptions, right? But in basketball, no, it's Woj.
Here's a very important question, though. Does anyone really care who gets the scoops? Do you care?
I compare it to Nikki Fink. in Hollywood.
Yeah.
We don't know who those executives she is writing about. We don't really even care about the scoops like we care about movies, right? But because she cast herself as this person who is against the big bad studio, who is going in and getting that knowledge for you. And that's what the insider has done, right? Like half of these deals, remember the trade deadline? What was that last week? I'm losing track of time.
Yeah.
Nothing happened.
Right.
Nothing happened at all. And we were just, days and days and stuff, and no moves that will probably affect anything in the playoffs happen. But this idea that we're behind the curtain and that there's this big bad Death Star of the NBA and this one guy or woman is going in and getting it for us. I think it's almost a romantic figure now in sports writing. Like we look at that guy and say that guy's working for us. He's not working for the man. He's working for us.
Yeah, Woj became a cult hero the last couple of years. I remember somebody wrote a piece about just watching him at the draft, just watching him on his BlackBerry for 5 hours. It was like, can you imagine somebody doing that about like Dick Young?
No. You sent me the NBA Finals last year before Game 1. And I was looking, and Zach Lowe was here. And of course, Zach's talking to the assistants because he knows everybody.
Zach knows everybody.
Mark Stein is standing in front of a TV camera, getting ready for a stand-up. That's Steiny, right?
Yeah.
And then there's Woj kind of over on the side. And it was kind of
Black
like
Ops.
NBA power in one NBA journalistic power in one tableau. And I was kind of like, oh, wow. And of course, I'm sitting there and everybody's just walking by. Nobody knows who I am. But those three guys were kind of those are the three options, right? The
smartest thing we ever told Zach when we hired him was, we're just sending you to stuff and you don't have to write. Mm-hmm. Just go for the networking. Go to Summer League for a week. You don't have to write one thing. Just go and talk to people, meet people, make connections, get people in your BlackBerry or your iPhone.
And that's where you go, right? Not games.
No.
Games are losers, right? Everybody's there. But the work those people do is at Summer League, spring training, if you're in baseball.
The last 2 rounds of the NBA playoffs are good because people are on the court like 3-4 hours before. And there are some people. I used to get some good information when I was on Countdown those 2 years just from kind of wandering around an hour before.
And it's a credential that you're there. That means you're powerful.
Yeah, I'm on the court. You're on the court. Hey, what are you hearing?
Don't you love now when we get the press, like the new credential is on Twitter, you take a picture of the empty court or the empty field from the press box and go, my office tonight?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. It's kind of the new Dateline. Right? You don't even need a Dateline on your story. It's like my office tonight. There was this great moment during the college football playoff games where Chris Brown, Greylanders, Chris Brown, was talking about a play, and one of the guys in the press box goes, "Oh no, that's not what happened. This is what happened. I had a great view from the press box." And Chris was watching all 22 film.
Yeah,
I was like, pretty sure Chris has a better view than you. I know you're there, but pretty sure.
Well, now that they've changed the seats, it doesn't make a ton of sense to try to report from shitty auxiliary press seating
in the corner, the corner of the court, or the corner of the football stadium.
I remember I was watching in San Antonio. Both years, our set was kind of in the corner. We had a nice, like, big, tall view of the court.
Yeah.
But underneath us were all the press people. They were all on TweetDeck the entire time, all of them. They're just watching TweetDeck and occasionally looking up at the game. And I'm like, why are there are real reasons to be at the game, but if I'm at a game, I'm watching the game. I want to watch the timeouts and the huddles and people walking on the court when somebody's shooting free throws. How are people interacting? That's the stuff I watch when I'm at a basketball game.
Yeah, and have you ever followed a play-by-play of a game on Twitter?
I think TweetDeck's the worst.
Have you ever
I can't handle
looked at Twitter and go, I wonder did Steph Curry just shoot the ball?
Right.
And it's always so weird. By the way, when handful of times last year, I've been in a press box, they'll make an announcement like so-and-so is gone from the game of injury. And then you look at Twitter and everybody tweets it. And you're like, oh, they're working off the PA. They're not even working off their eyes. They're working off the PA system. The
stuff I like is if somebody's at a game and they say, weird situation just now in the huddle, DeAndre Jordan and Blake Griffin had to be separated.
Yeah.
That's the stuff I want to know if you're at the game.
That's valuable.
Or LeBron James is really frustrated with his team. He won't talk to anyone in the huddle or things like that.
Or Draymond Green screaming in the locker room, allegedly Draymond Green at halftime the other day, right? The Warriors was the Thunder game.
Hold on. We have to take care of business for 1 second, but hold that thought because I have a lot of thoughts on that. When you're making an investment, I'm invested in your thought that's about to happen, but when you're making an investment, you want to make sure one thing, that your investment is going to pay off, right? Well, investing in the safety of your home is no different. And you might buy a home at some point.
Yeah.
in LA.
I
You
do,
live
ideally.
with the in-laws now.
I am.
At some point, you might be over here.
That's right.
Might have to invest in the safety of your home. So let's talk about home security. Researchers from leading universities like Rutgers and UNC Charlotte have proven security systems deter burglars, talking about a deterrence rate of almost 90%. So if you're trying to find a system that's right for your home, I have a suggestion. Simply Safe Home Security. They don't only protect your home, they save you hundreds of dollars, no hidden fees, no complicated installations. You get 24/7 professional protection for just $14.99 a month. And you can start or cancel your service at any time. So go to simplysafebill.com. Save 10%. Once again, simplysafebill.com. You and I both hate the concept of sideline reporters.
Yeah.
In general. For the most part, we could get rid of them.
It's a broken job.
Broken job. And yet Lisa Salters broke some news on Saturday night at that Golden State Oklahoma City game.
Yeah. And by the way,
That's pretty neat.
to be clear, I blame the producers, not the reporters themselves. I think it's a producer's problem. If you ever talk to producers, they'll say, the sideline reporter is an integral part of our broadcast. Okay, we're going to give him or usually her 2 minutes in a 3-hour game.
Yeah.
Oh, how integral is that? Right? Like,
But on the other hand, you have Tony Saragusa. So let's find a middle ground.
yeah, he gets 30 minutes of open mic time. Yeah, exactly.
Tony Saragusa is I once compared him to the maitre d' who keeps coming over to your dinner and stands over the table and interrupting your conversation. Like, all right, good. Yeah, we ordered. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, you can go now.
You're cool.
Great.
Yeah, we're good.
We're good, Tony. Okay.
We're enjoying the dinner. Thanks very
it's
much.
good. No, it's great. Everything's great. Yeah, my steak's awesome. Please go away.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's a perfect metaphor.
Okay, Tony. All right, cool.
Yeah, I want them. I think the thing is, and to my point about being experts, them to be experts on something. You know, tell them, like, you find a person you like, doesn't matter who it is, and they don't have to have some background. Just study and be an expert. Like Todd McShay, I know you don't watch a ton of college football. He stands on the college football sidelines.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm just going to tell you about the draft prospects of all these guys. I'm going to do injuries and do all the other sideline stuff that you need to handle, which takes like, what, a minute a game, 2 minutes a game? But I'm going to tell you about the draft stuff. And I've sat in a TV truck and listened to him, and just the stuff he says that doesn't get on the air is fascinating. And it makes the broadcast better because he's going, I just looked at, the USC linebacker and he's doing this, or he's walking really weird. Watch this, or this next play, this is going to happen. And he was right a lot of the time. And it's just a guy who's like really into football who happens to be standing on the sidelines, right?
We've never seen that with basketball.
No, but why not, right? It could be. You could just put a guy or woman out there. It's a little fast, I guess.
It's fast. Especially if you have a 3-man booth, there's just not enough time to talk. I've done a couple of 3-man booth NBA games. It flies by. You're like, oh my God, it's the third quarter. I feel like I've said 2 things, but it moves.
But what if we replace those stupid coach interviews that Greg Popovich has totally exploded for everyone?
I hate the coach interview has been terrible.
With a little mini point about the spot on the floor where, the Spurs are just killing the other team. Right. Or the play they've run 100 times where the guy can sit there and explain it and say, here's what I heard. Here's what I see when they're bringing the ball up the floor, talking about this, or here's what I hear them chatter. It's like you need eyes and ears, right? And somebody who really knows the game. And I think that I'd be much more interested in that.
The thing I've learned about TV from my own experiences with it is most of it is about job preservation. You just want everything to look like everything else so nobody can. The more you try and the more chances you take, the bigger the chance somebody will go, why'd you do that? We should get somebody else. Yeah. So you just want everything to look like what everything else looks like. The first year we did TV, it was me and Wilbon, Magic, and Jalen. And, we just kind of figured out, we're trying to do like almost a barbershop type thing. And there was a way for it to work, but it couldn't have worked with the way ESPN did the shows because we had to follow all these cues instead of just kind of letting us loose. And one of the things that used to drive them crazy was if we somehow screwed up heading to a commercial, if it wasn't totally polished enough. And the reality is, if you're watching at home, you don't notice. Nobody cares.
No.
It's like, I a second paused after I finished my read for the win. Like, nobody cares. People care if there's chemistry and if they're interested in the discussion. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's why PTI is so brilliant, because they've created this structure of people aren't hosts, but they're within a structure that they have to follow, but not totally. And the bell rings and you can go buy it for 30 seconds. It's the only show like that.
Yeah. And they imported the chemistry from a newspaper.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody who's worked at the Post said, that was what they were doing in the paper.
But it's funny that everybody who does that show is like, I love Pete Tao. It's the most fun I've ever had doing TV. And yet we won't recreate that with really anything else with TV except for Charles Barkley's TNT show, which is basically the same format. They throw them out, let them go.
Right. Which is underproduced and just people actually having a human conversation.
Yeah.
Commercials are rough because, as you know, that's what you care. You sell. Putting sports on TV is about selling beer. It's not about putting sports on TV. No one's doing it.
Well, we'd have a halftime show. We'd have 4 people, and we'd have 3 minutes. So especially if you have a host, because any host that does a studio show is going to want to grab 35 seconds at the top to do like a very long before they throw it.
Sure.
So, but in the first year, we didn't have a host. It's still 3 minutes. If you make a point, it's about 30 to 50 seconds, right? So if Magic goes for a minute, now there's 2 minutes left. And you're listening to the guy, but you're also doing the math in your head.
Yeah.
And you're thinking like, when the ball comes to me, I'm talking. I'm just getting my point out. I got my Tim Duncan point. I'm plowing ahead with it.
Right.
And what happens is it's just 4 people taking turns giving a 45-second speech, and then you go to commercial. And that's not television.
It's like 3 ball hogs. Right.
Yeah. It's like, all right, you shoot this play.
I got to
Next
get my
play,
shot.
I'm going to shoot.
Yeah.
And there's no interaction. And that's why the TNT, I always marvel at it because they have the long monologues, but they also have the interplay.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to do. It's so hard to get the hang of.
What you're talking about, too, is the exact thing the podcast is doing to sports radio.
Yeah.
And it hasn't kicked in quite all the way yet because podcasting is still relatively new.
Yeah.
But you listen to sports radio now, and I grew up listening to it. I know you listen to it. And it's too slick. It's too produced. There are no real interactions. Rarely there's no,
It's hollow.
It feels like it is. And it feels like then you listen to a podcast, you're like, oh, this is like human speech.
Yeah, yeah.
This is how people talk to each other.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
It's tough to do. It's tough to have a good conversation in 9 minutes about anything.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that, I've been thinking about this a lot with the TV show I'm about to do, but also like you watch late night and these guests come out and the audience applauds, guest walks out, shakes hands, sits down. That's 40 seconds. Hey, so what have you been up to? And then that's another 30. Now we're going. Now you tell the rehearsed story about, so I heard you were in the Bahamas.
Oh, God.
Because everything's on the pre-interview. They tell the 2-3 stories that are going to kill with the 200 people in the studio audience.
Right.
Show the clip and they're out.
host-
It's not a conversation.
The host fake laughs.
Yeah.
I've gotten really obsessed with Jimmy Fallon's fake laugh. By the way, when they're doing the the karaoke things or the impressions, and he's going, his mouth is open and his head is shaking.
Yeah.
But you know he's not real. Like he can't find everything that funny.
No.
And I can't watch late night anymore because it's too packaged.
It's
too
funny
slick.
when I watch, because I know Jimmy so well at this point. I've known him since 2002. And I always know when he's real laughing or fake laughing. Most of the time he's really laughing, but there's a couple I'm like, that was a fake
Sometimes
one.
there's some filler, right? you gotta laugh here, right?
But he's got a great fake laugh. That's one of the things I would buy on eBay is a fake laugh. I have no fake. I don't even try to fake laugh.
Yeah.
I just stare blankly.
You're
and
not a fake
with
laugh.
happy.
You're not really a fake laugher.
I can't. I don't know how to fake laugh.
I can fill though. If I need 2 seconds,
you have a
courtesy laugh.
You have a good fake laugh
Yeah,
with you?
I've got a good one. I think so. Developed over the years.
Wait, we should talk about the dramatic return to Sports Illustrated by Rick Reilly.
Whoa.
Yeah. The Afterlife of Reilly.
The Afterlife of Reilly.
That was your joke. I stole it from
There
you.
you go. Rick's back. He was taking a break from sports writing, and now he's writing the cover of Sports Illustrated. I thought when he walked, I'd love to talk about this sometime, but I thought when he walked, there was this exhaustion with sports writing. And he'd been doing it since he was basically literally in his teens, I think, both at the college paper. He was quickly on the newspapers, LA Times, SI for 100 years. And I always got the sense with his ESPN run, he felt he'd written everything,
He didn't want to write anymore, and I think they just offered him a lot of money.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh.
I would say yes if I felt tapped out and they offered me millions of dollars.
I think they just made it hard for him to say no. There's a lot of recency bias with Rick, and he didn't help himself in a lot of different ways, but that guy was a great writer.
Absolutely.
And wrote, especially in the late 80s, like the 87 to 96 range, wrote some unbelievable pieces. His Greg Norman piece.
Yeah. The run at SI was incredible.
Yeah, he was awesome. And
the way he did that back page column too, when it was really going, that's a really hard trick to do. Write for a national audience, Do it weekly with a magazine lead deadline.
And also 800 words.
Yeah.
I had the 800 word column at it. Initially, ESPN magazine, they were like acting like it was a huge favor to give me this column. Mm-hmm. It was like 680 words. Like I can't even fart in 680 words. Then I got them to go to 800. It still wasn't enough. 1250 was the right length for that column.
You could at least
800, you're doing a Reilly imitation.
Yeah.
Big, you have some hard angle, big intro, body, and it's just like a formula. It wasn't fun for me.
Isn't it funny? The titans of print, who I always just find this funny in this moment we're in, right? Where there's still these guys around that were the biggest guys, who are now finding their way in new media. When they're divorced from their actual physical newspaper or magazine, it feels weird. Like Reilly felt right when you open the back page of Sports Illustrated. Then you put it on ESPN.com and it was like, something feels off about this. Like something just feels, and I suspect he felt it too. I mean, I remember talking to the people at SI.com. And they said one time his column on the internet wasn't as popular as it was in the magazine. Weirdly, like to the extent they could measure it, like wasn't a huge hit on the internet because it was like you just get
too short.
Yeah, and if you talk to those guys, they also say when they wrote for print, they knew who their audience was, like intimately, and then they go on the internet and they're like, it's like jumping in the Pacific Ocean. Who am I writing for? He says Lupica, just start doing a column for Sports on Earth.
Yep.
And I imagine it's gonna. I don't think I've read it yet, but I imagine it's gonna feel the same way. Like, he felt totally natural in the Daily News. That's where he belonged.
Well, I think there's a certain art to writing a column that exists on one page of a newspaper, and you're trying to structure it so that it fits that exact length of the paper. The great thing about the internet is there's no length. And when Reilly got to ESPN.com, and he was a dick to me coming out of the gate, like just point blank. Like
to me in the New York Times.
Yeah, he just
remember that.
Yeah,
pretending like the phone. I asked him about you, and he pretended like the phone hung up.
It was just a weird way to play it, and he made it adversarial. And then obviously, I was like, well, I'm not going to help you in any way. And
didn't you guys have a podcast? Didn't you eventually have a coming
we
together?
We did one podcast that I did as a favor to Skipper and Walsh that I regret. Just for that was the reason. I should have done it
nice.
Yeah, it was like this was a big issue for them because people were making a big issue out of it. And the reality was I didn't do anything. Like Reilly came out of that piece and he was basically like, the people write too long on the internet and I'm going to bring it back to where it should be. And it's like, fuck you, dude. Like, who are you? The world's moving on. There's lots of ways to write about this, but we've talked about it since. It's fine. I don't have any hard feelings toward him, but he was so condescending about it. And I think that really played a huge part with how the internet reacted to him. Because he's basically telling all these people the way you're doing it is wrong.
Yeah.
Now I'm the adult. I'll show you how it's done. It's like everyone's like, go to hell. Who are you?
That's a weird way to start.
Really bad way.
Telling everybody that their favorite writers suck. And then,
yeah. And that bloggers have no credibility and you have to be. I mean, that whole generation really was adamant that you had to be in the locker room to have an opinion that mattered.
Sure.
I'm not saying they're 100% wrong, but they devalued the opinion of just if you weren't in the locker room. It's like that opinion didn't matter, and that was the mistake.
I compare him to what Oscar Robertson was saying the other day about Steph Curry. These are the metrics we were judged on. Yeah. Now, wait a second. You tell me that three-pointers are more valuable? There is a three-point line, right? Yeah. You tell me that three-pointers are more valuable, and wait a second. I got paid the big bucks. I got judged by my peers. I got in the best sports stories of the year by doing the old metrics. The world told me those were the metrics. Go into the locker room, write a negative column, and go in there and
facing the guy the next day.
Reamed the next day by that guy. Almost coming to blows, having to be separated. And the world changes. I have a lot of sympathy for that. Because I don't excuse the sneering attitude toward the web because it's just stupid. But I also have a lot of sympathy because I feel like about Oscar Robertson, I feel like, it was a different world. And of course they're going to lash out, against the new thing. Yeah, with Oscar, he just can't fundamentally understand how somebody could shoot like this. So he just blames the other players. Right. It's not in him to understand it. If I watch somebody write 12 good sports columns a week with 12 different great angles, I'd be like, what's going on here? What is something you'd instantly look for a reason that it couldn't be true. Yeah.
And I think that's what
Supernatural.
happened with him. It's like, this guy's, why is he making all these shots? It's everyone else that they should guard him harder. And it's like, no, actually the game's evolved.
Yeah.
People are good at shooting threes. But I think with the internet, they're not wrong about it's good to be in the locker room and good to talk to people. The big difference, though, in the last 15 years is what access am I actually getting from the locker room?
Right.
Basically, and I'm not going to name the NBA teams or the writers, but you know who they are. They're freaking extended PR firms for the teams now.
Yeah.
And you're seeing this over and over again now, where it's very, very, very skewed toward the player and the team that the guy is covering. All the coverage you're reading. When's the last time you read a hard piece about anybody?
Exactly. And it's like you read it as not journalists shirking their duty to go in the locker room, but as rebelling against the lack of access that they would have gotten had they gone into the locker room, right?
Well, you faced this with the OKC piece.
Yeah.
You wrote a whole piece about how OKC was handling the media. And that was probably...
handling is a good word.
Handling, yeah, I was being
Limiting,
generous. Glad handling.
Yeah.
But it's, it's like Durant and Westbrook were babies a lot of the times. And
Durant
I think
still is,
everyone
by the
enabled
way.
him. He's a huge baby.
I mean, it's like finally I think the scales are dropping from people's eyes, right? And I think
People got so upset about your piece, though.
Oh my gosh.
The team was furious. It was like, how dare you lift the cape that we've carefully placed over this whole situation.
The kimono that we've
seriously.
It was really funny too, because all these national NBA type writers were really cheering me on when I read it.
Oh
'cause
my
they were
God.
like, Oklahoma City's terrible. This is a really bad place to do journalism. And as soon as the piece came out, they would go on national radio shows and they'd get asked about it. And they go, oh well, I agree with some of what Bryan said, but some of it was overstated too. And I was like, okay, cool.
Right.
You got your access to worry about. I understand, but it was pretty funny.
They are notoriously the worst.
Yeah.
And it is not even a competition. They're the worst. Everyone hates dealing with OKC. The players are babied. It's just like you saw, like not so coincidentally, after you had that access, there was a piece about Russell Westbrook on SI with a lot of Russell Westbrook access.
Sure.
And I don't think it was a coincidence.
Yeah, watched him do charity work and everything.
Yeah. Here's
But
Russell doing some charity work.
I'm sure the OKC reporters would have happily taken that had it been offered him. Funny how that works.
Let's say you're covering one of those teams. Are you going to write a piece about like really killing Draymond Green for being unprofessional on Saturday night?
Yeah.
And risk not being able to have any access to him for the rest of this season?
No, you'll wait until he's traded or retires, and then you'll dump it. This is my new favorite genre.
The Reggie Jackson.
Yeah, that's a good one. Or but Blatt got some of that the other day. LaMarcus Aldridge in Portland. And I call it the Now They Tell Us column.
Yeah.
Oh, wouldn't this information have been happy to know when he was playing for the team?
Reggie Jackson was a great one. They traded him, and like his body, I don't even think he was on the plane yet, and he just got crushed.
Yeah. And as I think I wrote in that Oklahoma City thing, it was like he was the one sticking up for the writers. When Westbrook would yell and yell at them, he'd bring over the chair and say, "Here, use my chair." Right. That was telling. But he was the bad guy. Okay, great, gotcha.
Where can we go with Steph Curry for media coverage at this point?
He's weirdly accessible still.
He is.
Seems
like a good
everyone's
guy.
waiting for the garage door to close. It probably will. He's weirdly, someone wrote a column this weekend saying, it was my buddy Josh in Slate, saying nobody hates Steph Curry. Well, wait, just wait.
Yeah.
And maybe they'll hate him because he's just too good to be true, right? But eventually the media will find something. We'll find an angle on him. Nobody survives forever. Jordan didn't survive forever. LeBron survived 5 minutes, the decision, right? And probably before that a little bit.
It could be, for Steph, it could be what he's going to do with his contract. When's he free agent after next season?
2017.
If the Charlotte stuff starts.
Ooh, yeah.
And somebody will start that early. It'll be the same thing like the Durant Warriors thing. Somebody throws it out there, ESPN takes it and runs with it for 48 hours. It's on every show, and then it becomes a story. And meanwhile, Steph Curry hasn't done anything.
We're still talking about ball player loyalty.
Yeah.
40 years after NBA or MLB free agency, we're still mad. We still get mad,
I think it's in play that he could go to Charlotte. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think it's something that at some point he's going to be at dinner with his wife if they win back-to-back titles and be like, hey, if we win 3 in a row, would it be weird if I went to Charlotte? I mean, I personally think you don't leave a great team. There's nobody has ever done that.
Yeah.
People leave bad situations or situations with dead ends. Like Kareem left Milwaukee because Milwaukee was fading and it wasn't the place to be. Shaq left Orlando because of Penny. And LeBron left Cleveland because they had mismanaged the team and he saw the writing on the wall and wanted help.
And he was right. Yeah.
And he was right. Nobody leaves a 3-time champ. Now, if Durant gets knocked out in round 2 again,
you can say they've topped out, right?
He might say, like,
he did what he could.
Been in this situation and this team doesn't spend money like the other teams and maybe I need to be in a bigger market. Like, he could talk himself into that.
Yeah.
I don't see Curry winning 3 straight titles and being like, okay, time to go home.
Right.
But if they lost this year and they didn't win again next year, maybe, who knows?
Yeah.
He's from there. His dad was a hero there. Like, he could be the biggest guy in the history of that state and probably is already.
Yeah, I was going to say he is playing across 3,000 miles away. Yeah.
But this is all a conversation that starting in around August is going to become a conversation because that's how stuff works now.
Yeah. Yeah. That could get them to turn on him. I didn't think about that, but that might be the move. That might be the
All
moment.
he has to do is say one thing wrong.
Yeah.
Be like, well, I mean, it's no secret. I love Charlotte. Boom.
Yeah. There you go.
There's a 7-day media arc.
What's he trying to tell us?
Yeah.
And then
why do you throw that out?
He starts to cut off access a little bit because he's scorned by his first wave of negative media, right? We could drop this. We could drop this scenario.
I don't mean to sound like an old crotchety guy, but so he came and did the podcast with David Lee, I think January 2013. He was such a sweet kid. He was so happy to be in the podcast. He took a picture of me. He was like, "Can we get a picture?" Like, he asked me and David Lee if we could all take a picture together of us in front of the Grantland sign. He's a big fan of our site. And now he's the biggest star in 20 years.
Yeah.
It's incredible to me. I feel like it was like a week ago when we did that podcast. And now it's like, I can never get him for a podcast.
No. But I still think that smile is big, with reporters, right?
Yes.
We like people who are having fun playing the game, right?
Yeah. Magic.
Who don't frown when they see us come around the locker and do a press gaggle, right? Yeah. Magic. Yeah, exactly.
Magic was like that his whole career. And that's why he was able to translate that into his hugely successable post-playing career because he's genuinely like that.
And Durant carried that off for a while, and then he got a little sour.
Something happened to him.
People turned, and he got
I don't
weird.
know what happened to him,
but
he was another one. I don't know where the wheels came off with him. He became jaded somehow, and I don't know why that happened.
I think it was just that run of bad luck where he was hurt, where they were losing, where they had a lot of bad things with the Harden trade. There was just a lot of things that happened within like a year, 2 years time that weren't his fault. But he sort of got blamed or got caught up in it, and I think that's when he got defensive.
Magic, and then we have to go, but Magic was really like that. We would go do a show, and it'd be some big game coming up, like I don't know, game 6 of some series, and he would show up and he'd just have a glow to him. He'd be like, "Yeah, we're doing it tonight." Like, it was 100% genuine. Like, he just loved basketball.
Right.
One of my favorite things about doing that show was being on that set with him for game 6, game 7 of Miami San Antonio. Just like the joy he had watching that. I think Curry might be wired like that. He might genuinely love basketball like that.
People who are old enough to remember the 80s NBA, who are old enough to have covered the 80s NBA,
yeah,
they remember that era where you could go into a locker room and get Magic. Or you could get Larry. A little tougher, but you could get Larry.
McCallum's book was one of the last times where somebody had that kind of access.
Yeah.
Unfinished business.
Yeah, exactly.
He was like riding on the bus with them and stuff.
And if you talk to him about Steph, they'll say that he is, and they say this like they're scared because they know it's going to end eventually. But it's not the Pistons, right? It's not the Jordan Bulls. It's a little bit of a link to that glorious past, right? It makes you feel like you're covering, I think all of us that cover sports now wish some level of our being that we covered sports when the athletes were like that. And of course, there were all kinds of bad reasons we would have to write newspapers and we couldn't write like we wanted and it was too short and all that stuff. But, I think that's what Steph reminds him of. And I think that's why, 10% of the sweetness of the coverage is due to that for sure.
Dream organization too, because very new wave kind of thinking with the owners.
Also that, yes.
This is another great sports media Twitter thing when people start complimenting PR teams of teams. It's a combination like, this is so inside baseball, I don't know who this is for, but also like stroking the PR team.
It's so great.
You should do that. You should start tweeting that
I
out.
will. A sports writer who shall not be named sends me them every time. It's usually college teams. It's like, oh, what a professional sports information director to work with.
Great SID.
Great guy.
Great SID at Tennessee.
Or when they leave their jobs or get fired, they start stumping for them to get a new job because they want access at the 2 conferences over, right? Like, oh, he was great for me at Oklahoma. Maybe if he goes to Virginia, I can get some good stuff over there.
That's hysterical. One of my favorite sports media tricks when writers start stumping for the open GM job for some assistant on some other team. That is obviously one of their sources.
It's the long con, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's gonna get me in there.
He'll be like, who'd be a great guy to run the Memphis Grizzlies? Bryan Curtis. He'd do a great job. I've heard his thoughts.
And don't you think like the owner goes, oh, if
question.
famous writer likes him, that's good for us, right? Maybe the famous insider is so powerful and so smart. Like maybe he's right.
That's what happened with David Griffin. I'm convinced.
Okay, there you go.
David Griffin kind of lingering around. People keep writing how great he'd be, and then all of a sudden he gets hired. It's like, how do we know who's a good GM and who's not?
I figured that seems like a very basketball thing. I don't feel like I see that in the NFL.
In football, yeah, not as much. In football, football in general is weird. I think that's such a harder sport to do. To run a team and just everything. All right, we got to go. Thanks to HBO Now. You don't need cable or satellite to watch HBO anymore. Download the HBO Now app. Start your free 1-month trial today. San Andreas, Fast 7, Pitch Perfect 2. Every episode of Last Week Tonight and Ballers. It's all on HBO Now. Download that app ASAP. Thanks to Simply Safe. They'll give you 24/7 award-winning protection for just $14.99 a month. No contracts, no hidden fees. Start or cancel service when it works for you. For a home security you can trust, go to simplysafebuild.com and save 10%. Remember, security systems deter burglars at a rate of 90%. Thanks to SeatGeek, the presenting sponsor of the Bill Simmons podcast and Channel 33. Don't forget to follow The Ringer on Twitter, @Ringer. And don't forget to subscribe to our upcoming newsletter at theringer.com, where Bryan Curtis will be writing. I'm excited.
Boom.
This is going to be great.
I'm so excited.
We've had so much fun planning and talking and all kinds of stuff. All of us are just so jazzed. Oh, by the way, we should mention you might have a media podcast at some point.
I might have a media podcast. Ooh, good tease.
Yeah. You might do that.
We're gonna figure that out.
Interviews, all kinds of stuff.
There we go.
Fun. All right. Talk to you soon.
We about this bitch. Anytime y'all want to see me again, rewind this track right here. Close your eyes and picture me rolling.